Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Sanji. I'm a second year medical student studying at the University of Melbourne. Now this channel is all about learning how to live happier, simpler and more productive lives. And in this video, we're going to tackle a simple concept that allows us to tackle some of our goals. And so this concept is the principle of resistance. Now, I like to think that resistance is a universal thing that we all know about. It's that tense feeling that comes up whenever you want to get started on that 2,000 word assignment, or go to the gym, or even do the dishes in the evening. It usually takes all of our willpower to actually achieve that goal. And that's because it's hard to finish a lecture, it's hard to go to the gym, and it's hard to go for a run in the morning. And there's a really fundamental reason as to why this exists. And that's because, in our evolution as humans, we want to do the least amount of stuff possible in order to survive. We want to save as much energy so we can run away from predators, and we want to make sure that we have enough energy to look and hunt for our next meal, survive, and produce offspring. For example, let's think about Ugg. Now, Ugg's a caveman that's living 50,000 years ago. Now, there's only two things on Ugg's mind: how to find his next meal and make sure that he stays away from the predators who are infinitely stronger and faster than him. So the main reason why we have so much resistance to reaching our goals is due to part of our brain called the hindbrain, or as I like to call it, the monkey brain. And this is the first part of our brain that was developed evolutionarily, and this is the part of the brain that we have in common with most other animals on Earth. It's responsible for our basic survival mechanisms such as breathing, sleep, and movement, but it's also responsible for primal instincts such as fear and reward. And for most of our evolutionary lives, we only had this part of our brain. Therefore, our monkey brains are really strong, and they can often override our rational thoughts and decisions. And that's because ultimately, they want us to survive. Doing a lecture doesn't really help us to survive, so that's why our monkey brains put up so much resistance to actually doing that. There's also different degrees of resistance that you might feel, depending on the different goals that you have. So for example, today I woke up to my alarm and I pressed the snooze button, and I woke up 2 hours later than I originally planned. Now I reckon that the snooze button is probably one of the biggest forms of resistance that everyone has to deal with every single day. And there's a twofold negative to pressing the snooze button. Firstly, it stops us from getting an early start to our day. And number two, studies have shown that people who press the snooze button are more likely to feel tired and groggy throughout the day. And the reason for that is because even though we get an extra 30 minutes of sleep, that sleep is often light, poor quality, and actually detrimental to the overall amount of sleep that we get. Bad habits like pressing snooze have very little resistance, whereas good habits have a lot of resistance. For example, like going for a run in the morning. But the great thing is that people have been dealing with resistance for hundreds of years. And because of that, we can take lessons from them in order to actually tackle our goals and reach our habits. I like to split up resistance into two concepts: internal resistance and external resistance. Now, internal resistance is our monkey brains telling us not to do things. And because it's so deeply wired into our evolution, it's really hard to change. External resistance is literally our environment, and our environment can be changed. So what we can do is we can put systems in place which make our goals easier to achieve. And what that means is that over time, we'll actually be able to ingrain these as habits. So we know that a habit takes about 30 to 90 days to be developed. And until then, we could either rely on our internal motivation, which often doesn't happen, and you can see that by the number of people who stop going to the gym after January. Or we could change our external resistance or our environment. And you'll find that even though you're changing little things which are seemingly insignificant, day by day, over time, you'll find that you're able to ingrain your goals as habits. So let's think about trying to change a bad habit. So let's say that I really want to stop playing video games for 3 hours every single day. Now there's a couple ways that I can actually tackle this. So right now my PlayStation's in my room. So if I wanted to increase the resistance to actually playing games, I could put it in a separate room, which means that I have to go through more effort to get to it. Or I could put a parental control timer on it. Now what that means is that the resistance has now gone from 0 to 50. So now, instead of the PlayStation being right at my desk, I now have to take time to get there, I have to turn it on and wait a while for me to get into a game. Now because of that, I might be more inclined to actually just sit at my desk and actually finish the lecture before I actually start playing games. So our monkey brains hate going through extra steps. So putting hurdles in the path of our bad habits can actually make them harder to achieve, and thus as a result, we're more likely to spend time doing good habits. But yeah, how about good habits? So let's say that I wanted to go for a run in the morning. Now, going for a run in the morning when it's freezing is probably one of the hardest things to do. So how could we actually try to achieve that? So right now, My resistance to running is probably 100, but in the past I used to run every morning at 5 a.m. when it was freezing. And in order to do that, I had to radically change my environment in order to make this goal easier to achieve. So what I did is I wore socks and a jacket to sleep, which means that when I got up, I'd be a little bit warmer. The second thing what I did is I bought a smart plug for $15 and I have an oil heater in my room. I would make the heater turn on at 5 a.m. every morning, and so in half an hour it would make my room a little bit warmer, which means that it was easier to get up. Thirdly, I bought a smart light, which would also turn on 30 minutes before I woke up. And so instead of it being dark outside when I woke up and you'd want to go back to sleep, it was now really bright, which means that I tricked my brain into thinking that it was already the morning. And finally, I put my running shoes and my running clothes on the foot of my bed. So now it was really hard for my monkey brain to rationalize a reason as to why I shouldn't run in the morning. Everything was set up, it was warm, it was bright, I had my clothes, so I didn't really have an excuse not to run in the morning. And that's what really motivated me to get through those first 30 to 90 days of running before my internal resistance actually decreased. So rule number 1, change your environment. A common problem that personal trainers will often come across with their clients is actually getting them to the gym in the first place. So when you actually ask your client, how often can you come into the gym every week? They say, I don't know. And so the personal trainer might ask, can you come in 3 times a week? And a person might say that they're busy. So then they reduce that to 2, and then finally they reduce that to 1. Anyone can come to the gym for 1 hour, 1 time a week, no matter how busy you are. So by setting the bar so low, you almost make it impossible not to achieve. And what that means is that once your client starts coming consistently 1 time a week, you can slowly start increasing that bar as the internal resistance starts to decrease. So we can also apply this concept to the lecture that you just can't be bothered doing. So what you should start off with is just set a simple goal of doing 10 minutes of your lecture. And after you've done 10 minutes, you realize that you're already sitting down, you're already in the middle of the lecture, so you might as well do another 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, 10 minutes becomes 20, 30, 40, 50, and now you've finished your lecture. Internal resistance, or your monkey brain, will always be there, but it's up to us to actually tip the scales and change our external resistance so we can actually reach our habits. So by using those 2 simple principles, so number 1, lowering the external resistance, and number 2, making sure that our goals are small but consistent, we'll be more likely to set up systems in which we can actually lower the external resistance and make it more likely for us to achieve our goals and let those goals become habits over time.